Hi everyone, myself Apurba Nandi and I welcome you to the USTM IAS Academy. I am here in this USTM IAS Academy. I am the teacher of Indian Economic Development, Indian Society and Social Justice. I am teaching here hundreds of students, and I once again welcome you to the our social media or YouTube platform of USTM IAS Academy. So this is my first video in this platform, so I hope you will be liking it and you will also share your valuable comments and suggestions after watching the whole video. And obviously that the video that I have got is very relevant to your topic, to your preparation, that you can see in the screen. Today's topic is India on the eve of independence. That today in this video lecture we will study about, we will quickly know about how was the Indian economy during the time of independence or just before the time of independence, or in other words we can say after the rule of 200 years of the British colonial masters, what they have done to our India's golden economy. Okay, so let's start with the first. You can see a circular chart here, that you can see here: low per capita income, low savings, low investment, low productivity. These are certain technical terms that we will come into it a minute later. So first of all, you see here a quotation. It is written, India was the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. That India, out of all the colonies of British Empire, India was considered as the crown of the jewel on the crown of the British Empire, but a hollow one for Indians. But for the Indians, the crown or the jewel was hollow. It was nothing from inside, because just like the termite do to a wood or a furniture, the British colonial masters has also done to the Indian economy, that they have eaten up all the nectar of the Indian economy for their own benefit. That's why we are calling it the hollow jewel. So what ultimately happened at the end of the colonialism, at the eve of the independence, that in India, the population of India was having a very less income. What do we mean by per capita income? Per capita income means that it is the income earned by an average Indian, earned by one Indian. Okay, so the technical formula for per capita income is the total income of the country divided by population. So that tend to be very low during that time. So due to the very low income, certainly people will have very less savings, because people were struggling, the Indians were struggling at that time to eat, for the clothing, for their own shelter. So they cannot think about saving also. So a higher percentage of Indians were in poverty. That's why due to low savings, the Indian economy has experienced a very low domestic investment. That as people have very less money for their own expenditure, thus they had less savings, thus they do not have any money left for further investment of the Indian economy. So that's why, as there is no investment, so the production of Indian goods and services was very low. Thus we say that India during that time was having low productivity. Okay, so next if we just discuss sector wise, like the primary sector, the secondary sector and the tertiary sector. That is the primary sector, the agriculture. So what happened during that time to our India's agricultural sector? So let's see. So our India's agricultural sector was also going through very difficult time. Like for example, the intermediary exploitation. That in agriculture, it was a time of thriving of the intermediaries like zamindars, mahalwars, or by the riotwari system. So zamindari system, which was very popular in Bengal, where the British, they put tax on the zamindars, and eventually zamindars exploited the peasants. Okay, so for example, if I am a zamindar and British has imposed tax on my income, so to recover that expenditure of mine, I will definitely increase the taxes on the peasants. So that was the zamindari system. Then another intermediate, it was the Mahalwari system. It was, this three was actually the part of the land revenue system of India. So Mahalwari system was what? So British officials, they gave a target from a particular village. They will collect a certain amount of money as a tax, and they appoint a person who was known as the Mahalwar. Alright, so that Mahalwar, they again exploited the peasants. And the last one is the Riotwari. By the introduction of the Riotwari system, the Zamindars and Mahalwars, who were the intermediaries between the British and the peasants, it removed it. That means the British government now directly charged taxes from the peasants. So all these three land tenure system was exploitative to the peasants, those are the farmers. Then comes the forced commercialization of Indian agriculture. So our Indian agriculture was very rich on the production of food crops, rice, wheat, horticultural crops, and etc. But due to the demand in the West for the commercial crops like sugarcane, jute, cotton, indigo, tobacco, opium, so those were some commercial products or commercial crops. So Indians were forced to cultivate in their land the commercial crops, which eventually declined the production of the food crops and led to the inflation in the market. What happened to our Indian farmers? The Indian agricultural families was like, they produce their food crops, they keep it for themselves, they consume it, and the surplus is sold to the market. But due to the mass aggregation of commercial crops or cash crops, people were producing more of jute, sugarcane, tobacco, opium, indigo, alright, which cannot be consumed to satisfy one's hunger. So that's why they had to purchase the food crops from the market. That means previously where they did not to pay any amount for the food crops for their day-to-day consumption, now they had to pay money for it. And then structural fragility, which tries to explain this, key Indian agriculture was very much dependent on monsoon. That is relevant in 2026 also, that Indian agriculture is still dependent on monsoon. If in any of the years monsoon is bad, if monsoon fails, then the agriculture in that particular year also fails in India. Next, highly fragmented landholdings. What happened by that time? Due to many British policies, the landholding, they got fragmented. So for example, if a peasant who had a very large portion of land, due to the repay of his debt, he had to forego a certain amount of land. So the land fragmentation was massive. So as much as the size of the land will get smaller, the yield of agriculture will also be very less, and lack of chemical fertilizers or modern fertilizers during that time. So what happened? These few things, they led to the decline of agriculture during the eve of independence in India. So another data you can see here, that in India 85% of the population was rural population, and among them 75 of them were dependent directly on agriculture. That means if agriculture fails for any reason, that means the 75% of this population will have to suffer. Now the next secondary sector, that is our Indian industry. Now you can see here a diagram that here it is written that make India a supplier of raw materials. That means who will make India a supplier of raw materials? The British. They made India a supply of raw materials. They used to take all the raw materials, whether it is cotton, whether it is jute or sugarcane, from India, and in the Britain, by getting to the process of industrialization, making finished products in Europe, which was the time of industrialization, by exploiting India's economy, they used to make finished goods, and that finished goods were again sold in the Indian market only. That means from India, they are taking the raw materials, they are making finished goods and selling it directly again to the Indian market, because India's market was massive. This thing is known as colonialism. Let me repeat once again, कि if any master or any country, it is taking raw materials from a country, processing it, making finished goods and selling the finished product in the same country, then this process is known as colonialism, alright, or colonization of a country. So due to this, what happened, that India's handicrafts, which was India very much famous and popular for, it started declining. Like say for example, the Dhakai muslin. The Dhakai muslin, it is considered as the softest cotton cloth in the world, but due to the factories made abroad, they used to make fabrics which are much cheaper than the Dhakai muslin. So what happened, those industries, those cottage industries or small scale industries, they eventually declined. Next, due to this, the modernity in India declined. That means modern industries arrived in India very lately by late 19th century or 20th century. Like so for example, in 1907 Tisco was there, then sugar, cement and paper plant that was established during that time in the late 19th century or early 20th century. Okay, that is after independence. Now a very popular theory which was given by Dadabhai Nauroji, who is also known as the Grand Old Man of India. He gave the drain of wealth theory in his work known as Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. In his work, he explained how the wealth of India was draining out from the country for the benefit of the West. So for example, British used to say that India was being a greater exporter, like India was exporting jute, cotton, tea, but actually, say for example, if you are exporting 1 rupees, okay, you got 1 rupees from your export and you again have to purchase the finished product. So let me just break down again into a very simpler example. Say for example, you have sold cotton worth ₹1 to the British. British has taken cotton and given you 1 rupee. British made from that cotton a piece of cloth, a shirt for you, and British offered it to you, purchase it, and you purchased that shirt with ₹3. You got 1 rupees, but you have paid 3 rupees for the purchase of the cotton shirt. So that was happening to India. India was not being an export surplus. That was a false narration given by the British. Okay, so but if India has earned something by the export, that also used by the British only, like say for example, to fund the expenditure of the British offices in London. Also British has fought 2 very big wars, that is World War I, World War II. The funding was also from the Indian economy, and payments for invisible imports. Payment for invisible imports, like the services that British gave, like shipments, shipping charges or the banking, etc. They also took money from India for that, for the payment of remunerations. Now, so if we see some data here, that is, say for example, the literacy rate, as we are talking about Indian economy during the on the eve of independence. So literacy is also an integral part of India. Of our topic, that is literacy rate during that time was less than 16%, or if we see precisely, we can say that it was approximately 12% of the population, and in that female literacy was much more lower, that is less than 7%, and the infant mortality rate it was very high. IMR was very high, that out of 1000 live births, 218 babies were death by they attain the age of 1 year. Next, 32 years was the life expectancy, where now we are experiencing close to 70 years. So you can compare what was the condition of the health of the Indians and now how much we have progressed. Along with that, we can say that India's growth was stagnant, characterized by exceptionally high birth rate and high death rate. That means we are talking about the population. During that time, the population growth was not higher, because as the birth rate was very high, so the death rate was also very high. So the population that was added in a year is approximately same the population that has been moved out of that country, means by death. Alright? Okay. So we can now just summarize what we have discussed. We have discussed that British introduced exploitative land revenue system like zamindari system, like Malwari system or the Ryotwari system. So India's industries, that is India's indigenous industries, was systematically deindustrialized. Say for example, that I have talked about the Dhakai muslin. It was India's indigenous industry, but due to the establishment of modern factories in the West, India's own industry got deindustrialized. And we have just now talked about the drain of wealth via trade, and India's indigenous agricultural economy was stagnated. India had a zero capital goods base. Now what do we mean by capital goods? See, basically there are two types of good. One is the consumer good, other one is the capital good. Consumer goods are those goods which me or you, we consume it directly. Say for example our clothes, say for example the food, for example our vehicles. These are our consumer goods. But capital goods are those goods which are used to make consumer goods. Say for example iron and steel, cement. These are capital goods. So if a country wants to grow in consumer goods, the capital goods industry base has to be very, very strong. On that base, on that foundation, the consumer goods industry will eventually grow. But India's foundational industry was very weak. And lastly, the British policies, it crushed the demographic poverty. Okay, means the poverty was experiencing more than 80% of the population into extreme form of poverty by the time British left India. So this is a very short lecture. So if you are interested, do comment on the video, or you can also comment what are the topics that you want to you want to learn, so that I can give you a very simpler explanation as much as I can. So do subscribe to our channel, do follow and write us, and if possible do come and visit USTM IAS Academy. Thank you so much. God bless.